Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about my favorite transfer portal pickups on the offensive side of the ball, and now it's time to do some defense. Let's go over to the other side of the ball and talk about my favorite transfer portal pickups on this side. And there's some big names on here. There are some names that are a little bit more under the radar, but definitely some guys that are going to make some big time effects for their team. And we'll start on the back end of the defense with Tacario Davis. This is a guy that could have gone to the NFL, plain and simple. Now, maybe the grades were a little bit later than he wanted to and wanted to kind of have that prove it year, but the reality is he could be in the NFL right now. He could be getting ready for the draft. He found his way back to Washington to reunite with his old head coach, Jed Fish, and he's a guy that I think could be incredible for this team. And I think the biggest thing about it is it's a contract year for him. He fully understands that. These guys come back for one more year. They understand that they don't hit that year, the stock's only going to get worse. So he's going to give everything to this team and make sure that he's in the best shape he possibly can be. I think he's someone that's going to be incredible. And losing a guy like Jabbar Muhammad is absolutely huge, and he was sorely missed this past year on the outside. Now you have that guy right back. You have that lockdown corner that you can really trust in. It opens up just so many things in the defensive playbook. So I think he's a very, very talented kid. I think he's someone that really could develop into maybe a second, third round, maybe even first round pick, depending on how the season goes. And he gives that Washington defense a very big need at that cornerback position. Patrick Payton, the other guy, he was one of the biggest names on the market, so not overly surprising that he's one of my favorites, but I think he's going to be a star in 2025. I really do. I think he's going to be a guy that gets double-digit sacks. I think he's going to be a guy that really tears a lot of people to pieces, if I'm being totally honest. And I think it has everything to do with what Blake Baker does. I also think it has everything to do with the guy that's going to be wearing number 7 right behind him. Harold Perkins is going to create just so much confusion. He does such a good job of maybe he's not getting to the quarterback every single play, but he's taking up about 2 offensive linemen, which means someone's unblocked and someone's making a play on the quarterback. So overall, when you talk about how good Patrick Payton is and how much attention you want to put his direction, can't really do that with a guy like Harold Perkins. You can't really do that with a lot of the edge rushers that LSU has been able to bring in with Jack Pryburn and Jamari Butler and all those guys. So it's going to be tough. If you got to get this guy one-on-one over and over and over again, you're going to have a really rough day, and Blake Baker does a great job of getting his guys one-on-one. So it's going to be awesome to see what happens with this group. I think this is a guy that can really have double-digit sacks, can become a first-round player after this year. Everything's just got to fall into a place just a little bit, and I think he's more than talented to figure this thing out. Dylan Tiananmen is another guy I wanted to talk about. Remarkable, remarkable player coming from Purdue to Oregon. And when you talk about that Oregon back end, they brought in a lot of guys from the portal. A lot of those guys just walked out the door, including guys like Jabbar Muhammad. Why am I blanking? Brandon Johnson, excuse me. Some very talented, very veteran players have left that group. This is the guy that you get to fill that. And frankly, he could be the green dot guy next year. Now, you usually give that to a linebacker, so we'll see what happens there, but he's a very, very smart, very experienced guy that absolutely will be a leader of this defense. And I think he's one of those guys that he's probably going to be more of a run help type safety. That's just kind of what he does the best, but he's more than capable in coverage, and it will be really awesome to see what he can do. He's going to face a lot of really good tight ends throughout that year, and it'll be really interesting to see what he can develop into. But frankly, I think him at Purdue was special. I think him at Oregon could possibly end up being a first 3 round picks, maybe in the second day of the NFL draft. He could go very early as far as I'm concerned. Nikhai Hill-Green is another guy I want to talk about. He's making his way from Colorado to Alabama, and without Devontae Lawson and Jahad Campbell, you badly need it. There's no doubt about that. And I love what Hill-Green can bring to this team. The way he plays the run is about as good as you're going to find across the country. He does such a good job of filling holes, making sure he doesn't over pursuit, making sure he doesn't do anything that puts him out of position. He just makes the right play right in front of him. Now, there are some tweaks to figure out, no doubt about that. Sometimes can play a little bit fast, sometimes can do a couple of things that put him in some precarious situations at times, but at the end of the day, very talented guy that really was the anchor of this Colorado defense in a lot of respects. There were a lot of guys that stepped up in a big way, but maybe none other than this guy. Definitely a huge piece and someone that the Crimson Tide badly needed. I think when you look at this defense for Alabama going into 2025, there's not necessarily holes. There's not issues with this defense, but there are definitely some areas where if you look back 5 years ago, they're probably a little bit more stocked at that position than they are right now. And I think linebacker is one of those. I think they're going to be in a position to make some big time plays in 2025. And I think this guy could be, honestly, SEC first all first team. I think he could be that special in 2025. Jamal Jarrett is another guy I want to talk about here for a second. Defensive tackle making his way over to USC from Georgia, and it's a very interesting one. It's a guy that got on the field at times throughout Georgia. There he's playing Tennessee Tech. So as you can see, he's not necessarily the guy that's going to get in every single down or play a ton for Georgia. And I think that was sort of going to change next year, but maybe not quite enough to where he felt inclined to stay. And he made his way over to LA. And the big question is, how much can you get out of him, at least initially? Because USC needs just about everything right away. They don't necessarily have the luxury to wait for this guy to get into order, because he waits a little bit longer. That defense, comes up flat in 2025. Lincoln Riley's out the door, and maybe Jamal Jarrett's finding a new place to play college football. So he's got to hit, and he's got to hit right away. Now, you did bring in Keyshawn Silver as well on the interior of that defensive line, so should be more than fine. Should have enough guys to really make some big-time plays, but the reality of this situation is USC is no longer bringing in guys to just help out the depth. They're no longer bringing in guys to see what they can be in 2026 or see what they can be in 2027. They're bringing him to play right now, and they're bringing him in to make big-time plays right now. So he's a great player. I cannot think more of him, and definitely a guy that I really much enjoy and think is going to be a great player for USC. But he better hit, and he better hit quickly, or you might just be finding a new head coach over there in LA. Ethan O'Connor is the other guy I want to talk about, a cornerback heading over from Washington State to Miami. It's going to be interesting to see what he does, because I do think from an outright talent level, he might be a little bit behind some of the other corners that have been brought in by Miami, a Chris Brantley, or a Xavier Lucas even a couple of days ago. Definitely the guys that might be a little bit further along physically than what Ethan O'Connor is. That being said, this is a very long and rangy corner. This is a guy that can really kind of assert his dominance at the point of attack, because he's got longer arms. He's going to be able to get that first punch, that first jam, and then work from there. He's also a guy that up in the air, when the ball's in the air, he absolutely can make every play you need him to make. He's definitely very, very good in man coverage, and I'm not necessarily saying you can give him one side of the field and totally leave him alone, but I do think you can have a lot of confidence in this kid. And frankly, I think he's just getting going. I think he's just getting started, and maybe it won't be right away for this Miami team that he becomes a star, but I think in time, he could become one of those players that we look back on and say, how did more teams not go after that kid in the portal? Because he definitely deserved it, and definitely was a guy that I think can explode onto the scene in 2025. Devontae Smith, not that Devontae Smith, but yes, the corner that was at Alabama, now is at Notre Dame. This was kind of early on, so went a little bit under the radar, but when you talk about losing a guy like Xavier Watts, there's not much you can do to replace that ability. There's not much you can do there. What you can do is try to replace that veteran leadership, and I think they did that here. It's a very, very talented guy, a guy that was around Nick Saban, has been around Malachi Moore, and around a lot of these really talented guys for Alabama. He knows what it looks like. He knows what leadership looks like. He knows what he's going to be asked to do. Now, he does have guys to bounce off of. I think Jordan Clark is not going to shy away from being a leader. Neither is Leonard Moore. Neither is Christian Gray going forward. It might be the very best back end in the country, but overall, you need that stabilizer. You need the leader in every single back end across the country. For Texas, it was Jahdae Barron. For Notre Dame, it was Xavier Watts. For Ohio State, there's an argument to be made for either Lathan Ransom or Caleb Downs. So at the end of the day, you need that guy on the back end that can get everything in order. I think this is going to be that guy, and I think he can make some great plays in the slot position. He's a little bit more capable of covering some of those tight ends or even some slot receivers that he's going to need to. It's going to be awesome to see what he can do this year, and definitely a guy that I thought the world of at Alabama. I think he's going to do some really special things up there in South Bend. And then we got Cole Wisniewski, one of my favorite players in the country. He made his way from NDSU to Texas Tech, and I think he's just going to be an incredible player. When you look at this Texas Tech defense from a year ago, there were talent on that field. There was talent on that field, and not necessarily elite talent overall, but definitely enough talent to play better football than they did. I can almost promise you that. And you look forward to what they need when you go into 2025. They need just about everything, but the biggest thing to me is you need that center fielder. You need that guy that can communicate to all of the back-end players and make sure they're fully in order, because when you look over at the Big 12, you're going to find a lot of drop 8 coverage. You're going to find a lot of guys that love to drop 3 or 2 safeties and make sure that they're in order and make sure you keep everything in front of you. That's exactly what Texas Tech is going to do. That's exactly what Cole Wisniewski loves to do. So it's going to be awesome to see what he can do in 2025. I think he's a guy that really could develop into a first-team All Big 10 or Big 12 type guy. That is how good I think this kid will be, and I think he's one of those that, again, another one that I think they're probably going to wish they put a little bit more attention into this guy. He's very, very smart. He's a winning football player, and definitely a guy that probably not going to miss a lot of tackles for you. Going to play very, very smart and very disciplined, and cannot wait to see what he can do. Very talented kid and has a lot of athleticism on the back end as well. So cannot wait to see what he can do in a Texas Tech team that badly needs a leader. I think they definitely got that leader. But a remarkable portal class. I think we had a lot of big-time names. The quarterbacks were a little bit all over the place. You don't know what to think about Jackson Arnold at Auburn. You don't really know what to think about John Mateer over at Oklahoma. Carson Beck going to Miami. It's been all over the place. There's no doubt about that. That'll relatively close the book on the transfer portal. Maybe a couple of more notes at the end of the week about those Notre Dame offensive linemen. But at the end of the day, that's about it. That's about all we got for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the social pages for all the content and updates you could possibly need. We have great people covering every single sport you could want. So anything in the world of sports you need, come on over to GSMC and we have you totally covered. Tomorrow, we will be doing all NFL draft. I'll do a little bit of an overview to start. We'll do my top 10 quarterbacks, my top 10 offensive and defensive prospects. I'll give out my first 12 or 10 picks depending on the way that I'm feeling. We'll get into all of that tomorrow. So kind of a little bit of an NFL draft extravaganza tomorrow. So tune in at 9 a.m. Eastern to see all that, and I will see you guys there.